All right, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for our next part of the Best of Ideas series, which is entitled and about the Learning Breakthrough series. We are joined by our very own Dana Bennis, who will be facilitating and leading us and walking us through this session. If you would like to follow along with the PowerPoint presentation, the link can be found on the event page. If you are following along in the video chat, we do have it or we'll have it posted in a second in the comments section. If you have any questions during or throughout the presentation, feel free to post those in the Q&A or on the event Google Plus page. All right, take it away, Dana. Oh, one more thing before you take it away, Dana. I'm taking it back for a quick second.
That's right back to it.
Also, for video viewers, if you want to click on your Google Drive, you can follow us in the presentation there as well once I post it.
Thanks, Crystal. So yeah, so if we're clicking Google Drive and then the presentation is showing up. Is that right?
Yes.
Ooh, I see it coming up. Look at that. Excellent. Thank you, Crystal.
No problem.
I am excited for this session and having a chance to talk about the Learning Breakthrough series as part of the Best of Idea. And that's in terms of idea, both lowercase and uppercase, I'd say. Because it's a pretty good idea. So here we go. We're going to do a little bit of just a brief, this presentation here, a slideshow. We're going to go through that quickly just as an overview and try and just lay some groundwork for what the Breakthrough Series is. And then going to have a few folks talk a little bit more about just the value of the Breakthrough Series that they've seen. And this will be open for anyone who's on the live video, as well as anyone who's watching otherwise through the presentation, through the YouTube, to share comments through the question Q&A as well. And then we'll have time for questions as well. So that's the plan, and so we're going to begin here with with the presentation. And so the Learning Breakthrough Series, maybe just start with a really brief. What is it? Kind of, if you can package it up into one sentence or one kind of thought. I would say that it's a process. It's a deep dive research and action process that generates knowledge and impact that goes across schools, across systems, and across communities. We're going to talk what that really means in detail a little bit. I want to first just say a couple things of what led us, the IDEA organization, the IDEA community, to this. And a couple of things. The first is that earlier on, we were holding tours and beginning to do some connecting into organizers and educators and activists and youth. And we were really loving having the impact, or the kind of the one-time events and things through tours, Idea Camp, and other activities that we were doing, and really wanting more to continue to have a way in which we can create more sustained connection and impact. And we wanted to really be able to have an impact that would actually be able to surface new ideas, both ideas that are already happening, as well as have groups come together and use their collective wisdom and experience to come up with new ideas and new ways. We didn't necessarily have this question or this need formed in that much of a detail, but it was definitely an inkling, a feeling. And what worked out really nicely, and kind of taking to the next slide, is that we had a chance to meet and then have had a bunch of conversations with one of the leaders of an organization called the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, a man named Paul Batalden. And what we learned through him is a lot, but the work of IHI for many years now, 20, 30 years, has been this idea of how to create real, lasting, sustained change in the healthcare field, in the medical profession. And the situation, as he was reading it and others, maybe 20, 30 years ago, is not too dissimilar from where we are in education. They were seeing a lot of great things happening, but a lot of disconnection. Those things were not being shared. And he noticed specifically, Dr. Batalden noticed what came up for him were that very clear that there are two different ways of knowing. two different kinds of epistemology or of knowledge, and one being the content side, the research, awareness about ideas and practices. The other was actually the execution, or the how things actually get put into practice in medical field, in hospitals and in clinics on the day-to-day basis. And so what they came up with, Dr. Batalden and others, was this idea of let's come together, a way to kind of share ideas and breakthroughs together in a series, in a cycle of learning and action. And so they created this series, and this evolved over time in their kind of history of their work, but evolved into this clarity around a cycle of plan, do, study, act. This kind of idea of both planning and reflection, or acting and reflection, which in the education world we know very much with Paulo Freire and the idea of praxis and action and reflection coming together in this idea of praxis. And so what we learned, and we're excited about this, and wanted to really see how we can bring this into the education field. And so how does an LBS work? What exactly is it? There's a few core elements of it. The first is that it begins with a real clear question of practice, and so or a dilemma, something that's actually a real something that's not clear, a real dilemma. So in IHI, it was about things like the length of a stay in an ICU, or things on that scale. So the idea being that you want a pretty clear and specific question that you can actually come around and really dig into together. The second, a second key point that I mentioned earlier is bringing together both these content experts, or research, and execution, or practice, and people who can put it into action, coming together. The third being a cycle of learning and action. And so this is what this kind of looks like is actually several days of coming together and learning together, teams of groups of practitioners, people putting it into practice, as well as those who've got the knowledge and the research on kind of that level. And so for in the research, in the medical field, that was researchers in that line coming together with nurses and doctors and aides and all of that. And so in education, of course, it's a similar way. Those who have some more national, broad, research-based experience coming together with those who are organizers, educators, young people, community leaders, coming together and sharing, bringing together those two ways of knowing. After these cycles of learning and action, then the last element that I put on here is that we come together on a summit to share the learnings, because the dual goals of the Breakthrough Series are, number one, to help, for sure, those who are involved in this series and support bringing up and creating new ideas and new ways of doing what they're doing that are really adding to the kind of general landscape and field. But it's that second goal of how do we kind of bring those ideas to the larger landscape of education. That is that broader goal. And so the summit is a time for that to happen, to share out a kind of a shared analysis and products and ideas that can be used and adapted to different contexts and different communities. And the key here is that it's never one solution that is going to be replicated in other places. Really resisting that, and actually part of what is shared is how ideas can be adapted into local contexts. So in the next slide here, we give the question that we used for IDEA's pilot LBS. So IDEA is now currently in the middle of our pilot Breakthrough Series. And as we thought of varying ways where we could go, we decided to go with this question that encompasses and connects to IDEA's existing organizing communities and organizing teams. And the question being, what connections and approaches to practice, policy, public narrative, and strategy support the meaningful and sustained engagement of all young people in communities and education while honoring the wisdom and differences of varying local contexts? Those four elements that I mentioned there are what we're calling, and we've talked about in other sessions here in an IDEA camp, are the four drivers, the actual avenues of change to create some lasting impact. So again, policy, practice, public narrative, and strategy. And so I shared a couple of images to the beginning of our Breakthrough Series, which was last November in Jackson, Mississippi. We had Learning Session A, and we were, you can see a picture there, we were welcomed at Tougaloo College for a lot of our work together. I would say that the learning session, which was it was a 4-day gathering of 50 people from 8 different teams, some real powerful learning was happening there. And so the teams include of our current breakthrough series a number of place-based teams in the IDEA network, as well as two additional LBS teams that are incredibly powerful networks and groups. One being from New York City, that includes the Coalition for Educational Justice, and Natasha happens to be on the call, and the Urban Youth Collaborative, coming together as a team. And then also a team from New England, several youth-led and youth organizing groups, all connected into Team Neon, or the New England Youth Organizing Network. And so those are excited to have the kind of the large group all coming together. And so through a series of conversations, protocols, provocations, and ways in which we support each other learning over the course of those days, we saw some really powerful just learning and shared kind of community growth happen during that time. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we have a couple other folks speak as well. In the next slide, I had a couple pictures here that brings another important element of the Breakthrough Series is this idea of place and connecting to place. You know, the actual learning sessions are in-person gatherings, and what's really critical to those is that we're in a context, we're in a community. And so we plan those accordingly in ways to connect to the local work that's happening in that community. And so a lot of what we're doing there, a good deal of that time is talking with leaders in that community, being able to having a chance to visit and learn from and with those folks. And so there's a couple pictures here of a tour of Jackson State University. We also spent a lot of time at Tougaloo, and certainly COFO was a real highlight, spending time learning about the involvement of COFO and in the civil rights work in Mississippi. And so wanted to share some of those pictures too. So the learning session A was in November. Since then until now, we've been in the first action period. So that's the time where teams are taking the ideas that they've come together and planned out in the learning sessions and putting them into practice. And there's kind of a series of ways to stay connected during that action period time. And one of them that we have a picture here of is action period videos. And so that was a time where we had teams create a 3 to 5 minute video. Nothing really, doesn't need to be huge and wonderful, but really a way to share out how things are going. What's the progress so far? What are some challenges that you're facing? What's feedback that you'd like to get? Some of the same kinds of questions and protocols that we were working with together in person. And then have teams share those videos and create a space, an online shared document where other teams and other participants could then come in and share their feedback and thoughts with each of the teams. And so there's a link here, and there's a bunch of links folks can check out to see documentation and all these videos as well. And the last slide here is just a few kind of visuals, icons from and logos from for our time coming up together for Learning Session B, which is coming up just next month, and really excited about being in Puerto Rico. And so you see some of the groups and organizations that we're connected with, and that we're learning from and with are on this page. And I think just the last thing that I wanted to say is just that in terms of introducing the Breakthrough Series, before we kind of break it out a little bit, is you know, so we're certainly in the midst of this current pilot Breakthrough Series, and what's exciting is as we try to we being IDEA community and broadly with other groups and other organizations, start to think about how this kind of approach or methodology, which is broader, far broader, you know, used in the healthcare field and other places, this idea of, you know, continuous improvement and continuous improvement science, how we can bring that in and really create generate some new ideas and new energy for education. And so so IDEA right now is thinking about a second Breakthrough Series and what that topic could be, and we've some interesting ideas are brewing up, and in general, how can we use this kind of a tool, and both across the IDEA network, but beyond in terms of the education landscape, and even in local communities, this kind of a model, how can it be taken in and adapted and used on a local setting as well? And so that's what I wanted to share right from the start here, and I wanted to first hand it over to a couple folks. And kind of give a little moment to share thoughts about well, first I'll turn it over to Jonah Kanner. And Jonah, just want you to share some your own thoughts about the the meaning and value of LBS as you've seen it, or anything else you want to share about it. And then definitely love to turn it over to, or ask Natasha to share some words, and then any other folks who are on the call as well, in terms of your what value you're seeing in the Breakthrough Series, and anything else that you want to share. So Jonah.
Great, thank you, Dana. And that was thank you for that, kind of laying it out and putting it in those terms. Of course, as I start talking, the air conditioner in this office is going on, so I'm going to try to be a little louder. The thing to me that the LBS speaks to greatly, that I really appreciate about it, is that that thing about being and bringing people together, and like actually together in the same space, working on their projects. I think that we locally have folks working locally have so many resources and so many things available to them where they are, and have such important and particular contexts where they are, and also have so much to offer and learn from each other. And so the idea of bringing folks from different places and different contexts with different particularities of their challenges to a space where they're being exposed to not just other folks who are also learning and working on their own projects and challenges, but a whole network of folks who are working on it together and see themselves as working on it together, I think is incredibly significant and can't be talked about too much. The other thing that I want to say is that in Learning Session 1, and one of the things that I think was primarily like a really important in the way that worked out is the work that is done on behalf of all of the folks coming in. It's not just let's bring people together and have them talk to each other, but there's actually some real research, some real work done in preparing for all of these groups to come together, and the presentations that were put together to get people on the same page, I think is a really big part of it, because it's not coming in and saying, okay, here we are, we're all together, let's go. It's coming in with prompts, with provocations, with a structure to have people not just brainstorming and mapping together, but actually having to create presentations. And we ended session 1 with presentations, and each group presenting what their plan was for the in-between time. Dana, remind me what that's called. I'm not looking at the thing right now.
The action period.
The action period, thank you. During the action period, these strategies and these plans are in place for the action period, and that, just the fact of having to present to a group of your peers, it does wonders to actually what happens in terms of your own thinking. And so it's getting to see these groups, and I in my role as water floating around the series, getting to see the different groups in the different stages of their provocation rounds, and the different stages of their brainstorming, and the different stages of preparing for their presentations, and then seeing the final presentations, getting just the amount of growth that happened in those couple of days with each of the groups was in itself very impressive, not to mention the way that the groups played off of each other and what they got and brought to each other. So those are some of the things that really stand out to me about the series. And just finally to say that the word learning is in the title of the thing that we're doing is, I think, so incredibly important, because that's what it's about. It's about learning together. It's about putting learning, our own learning, at the center, and seeing what breakthroughs happen, seeing what comes from it. And that intention is something that I think allows the participants to kind of rethink the way that they're approaching going about making change, and it gives them an inquisitive mind as they're kind of framing lens. So I think that that in and of itself, as well as the structures that support that idea, really make it an excellent format, an excellent program.
Yeah. Thanks, Jonah. Appreciate all that. And yeah, I would love, Natasha, if you're at a place where you can speak and share a little bit as a participant with the New York City team and from Coalition for Educational Justice, just what you're finding about the value of it, or anything that you want to share that impacted you from session A, or maybe anything you're thinking about going into session B.
I think one of the most powerful parts of it is really being able, is that provocation, right? And really searching for clarity, because I think what the New York City team experienced is that we're so used to speaking almost in a bubble about so many education issues that it was like, of course everyone knows what these things mean, right? And if you don't, then what have you been doing with your life? So, like, really get into a place where we were like, wait, we need to check our language, because if people who are even engaged in this work don't understand us, then the people that we are outreaching to, right, other students, other parents don't understand us, and they don't understand the work that we're doing and why we're doing it. So that was really, like, one of the things that pushed me, and I know that pushed a lot of the members on our team, was really those provocations around language, but also the provocations of education to what extent, right? Like, why? And why are you pushing for some of the things that you're pushing for? So even just viewing that maybe that education is not like a classroom experience, right? So that my children being at my hip as I learn to advocate is a valuable learning experience to them, because now they know how to self-advocate, right? And that they know how to ask difficult questions, even when they seem to think they're really simple. So those were like those really valuable things that I took away, and that I'm really interested in hearing like the progress that the groups have made, but also about having real, and I just really love that no one's afraid of having hard discussions. Like so I love being in places where I just get to say hard things and say stuff like about race and about gender and about equity, and that people aren't like, oh my God, why'd she say that? Like, so I can't wait for that.
Yeah. Thanks, Natasha. I appreciate that a lot. And I'm reflecting too on the Action Period video that the New York City team shared up, and I was, apart from being a really funny and great video, I was struck by some of the things that have happened, and that how you're talking about things that have moved and progressed since then, and in particular, for sure, the work impacting the education policy with the mayor as well, but also even just internally in terms of greater connections with UIC that may have come out through in part through this progress. You already knew about each other, but I wonder if there's anything you wanted to just in terms of that to mention.
So I think while we were always like working together, like we share office space and we always kind of like keep each other clued in, I think that it really set an intention on going forward. How do we be?
Hi. How are you?
How are you? Welcome.
I'm here too.
Look, there's a bunch of young people here from UIC.
Hey, look at this.
Having a meeting with the Department of Education. Get something to drink. So there's only to say hi.
Wonderful. Thanks for coming over, Adami. Great to see you.
I'll see y'all soon. I can't wait.
We're looking forward.
So that's the relationship between CUJ and UIC.
Nicely planned there. That was.
I know, right? But I think for us, it really, because there is a lot of adultism that happens with CUJ and UIC. Like, we're adults, we know stuff. You're young, you don't. So really being clear in that, yeah, your experiences matter, and that we should be actively listening to those experiences as a way to help further both of our work, because they're attached to each other. And so we've been really like in a lot more communication with one another and really trying to understand where the other set is going, and then I'm trying to think through like a kids of CEJ, like a CJ Junior or like UIC Junior, like how do we connect the like my children and the children of the parent leaders into a lot of the work, because they're always in the spaces. We always provide childcare. So how do we give our young people an advocacy education as we give our parent leaders that advocacy education? So like we're sharing some documents now around their work and our work to really try to make that happen.
That's really great. Yeah, that's exciting to hear, and I really appreciate you being on and sharing your thoughts, and it was fun to see Adalmi and the other UIC folks coming on the video for a minute. And we're actually rapidly getting to the end of this brief little session, but wanted to just leave it open for others, anyone on the call, Scott, Crystal, Jeanette, Sean, anyone who's here, to any other thoughts you might wanted to share about the Breakthrough Series, anything else that's to add to the conversation, or something that of value that you see in it as well. So just going to give a space for anyone to give a final comment or two, or if there's any questions. I don't know if there's any questions out there, but give a little space for a question or a comment.
I think like content-wise, you guys pretty much covered everything that came with LBS. I think one of the things I'm most excited about is although this is our first LBS series, how it's already building and how we're taking our learnings from the first one to improve on the second one, and how we'll do that continuously throughout the next 2 phases. And also the action videos, like you said, Dana, were the freaking bomb. It was exciting to see what folks were working on, what they're building towards, and to also continue connecting the dots like IDEA does. So great job. Thanks for the info.
Thank you, Crystal.
And one last thing, I know one of the things that I really enjoyed about the first one was really seeing Jackson, right, and really seeing the historical views of it. And so it'll be really interesting to actually see Puerto Rico, not like a resort, not just a hotel, not the prettiness of it, but to really see Puerto Rico.
Yeah, that's right, and I'm glad you said that, Natasha. That's what I'm most excited about as well, and I think is really important to this work is that's kind of embedded in the work, is actually connecting with those who are actively doing change work and working in schools and with young people right now. So just give a space for final comments. I see Scott's on the video if you wanted to share something. I wasn't sure if you wanted to. Or if anyone else wanted to just share a final thought before we wrap up the session.
Just saying hi. I was listening, and I don't have anything to add. I appreciate what you all put together.
Great. All right. Well then, thank you all. Really glad for this time. Appreciate everyone's time and conversation. And I turn it over to you, Crystal.
Well, all right. That pretty much concludes our evening at VIC, Virtual Idea Camp. I'm looking forward to you all joining us tomorrow for our last and final day of Virtual Idea Camp, where we'll definitely have fun, because that's what we do, engage with one another and learn more about IDEA and each other. So looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thanks for joining this evening, and have a great rest of the night.